Dragon decides to 3-bet, and Hubetsu decides to call, which is... I mean, he's probably going to listen to this, but this is unbelievably bad. So, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to continue the 5100 reg game review. The reason I chose this footage is because these are some of the best players in the world battling each other, so we can learn a little bit and be entertained in the meantime. So, why don't we get started? Again, you bet to open raises cutoff, and deep stack, these suited aces play pretty well. So again, a combination of 3-bet and call. I imagine that Poker Clock is going to call, otherwise 8-6 would not be in the pot. Makes sense. Dragon defends because he's got great odds. And he decides to donk the flop. Now, he correctly identifies that this flop is very good for him. He's got a lot of hands like 9-8 off, and pocket threes, and Jack 10 off, etc. At the same time, I would not really lead here. So let's see what Hubetsu does. He calls, so he's saying he's got a decent hand. And Poker Clocker should probably end up raising here. Dragon's pretty short. If Dragon had an overpair, I think he would have always squeezed. So unless he has hand like 3s or 8-9, and 8-9 you block. Or maybe 8-3, 9-3, perhaps. I think Poker Clock has the best hand like 90+% of the time. So I would definitely like to see him raise. His hand also needs a bit of protection, right? So imagine he has hand like pocket 9s, top set. Slow playing makes a lot more sense. I would like to see a raise. And he does raise. And Dragon's call. I think I would fold in Dragon's shoes because, yes, you unblock hands like Jack 10, but it's not as if Poker Clock is going to go crazy here. So I'll probably just end up folding. And obviously, Dragon loves that card, and, Hubetsu doesn't hate it. Small bet by Clocka, makes sense. And Dragon decides to go with it, unblocking the draws. If you're going to go with it, shoving is definitely the play. But I think his play is definitely too loose. And unfortunately gets it in with 0%. So nice hand by Clocka. I think he played everything well. Dragon's play was alright, but I think it was a little bit loose. So Clocka decides to raise 3x, which is a little bit unorthodox, but fine. King Jack suited is a fine hand to both flat as well as 3-bet. It's a hand, 3-bet is a little bit strong, is a little bit aggressive, but call is a little bit passive, right? It's kind of like pocket 8s or 9s. Again, 3-bet is a bit aggressive, but calling is a bit weak. So because you're ahead of villain's range, but not by that much. So calling is a perfectly fine option. And Jack 10 deuce is a great board for both of them. Dragon is going to flat a lot of broadways that hit this board, and Poker Clock is going to obviously have all the good hands too. Maybe he doesn't have pocket deuces, maybe he does, but he will have hands like Jack 10 suited, 10s, jacks, all the overpairs, etc. So he decides to bet large. He bets small. And let's see what Dragon does. I wouldn't be surprised if he raised, and he does raise. And Poker Clock is thinking, well, I don't have much fold equity, and I'm going to get it in behind, so I'm just going to call here. So he probably thinks Dragon is not going to go crazy with raises. And on the turn, again, pretty close. I think Clocka cannot fold because he's got a queen as an out potentially, a 9 as an out, definitely a flush as an out, So let's see if he decides to call or shove. I think call is the right play in this spot. And check, check. I do like the fact that Dragon checked behind here, and he won the pot. So good play by him. I like Poker Clocka's play as well. Call by Katya, definitely standard with pocket 8s. Again, 3-bet, calling is a bit weak, but 3-betting is too aggressive generally, so I like it. And Katya is in a shitty spot, right? Because, he's got a pair, but then again, it's 4th pair on a monotone and 3 straight board. So he's thinking, well, this is really close. But then again, his opponent only bet really, really small. So he decides to call. And, that's kind of the issue with this hand, right? This is about the best card you can hit, but, you could still be dead. So I like the fact that he checks, obviously. And on the river, let's see what he does. I like a check. And I think that, Kazon should definitely end up bluffing here. He could easily have hands like the king or the jack or the 9 of spades. So maybe even value bets a non-flush. So easy bet by him. And Katya, good call. So I think Katya played his hand well. Kazon could have bluffed the turn if he liked, but he doesn't have to. River mandatory bluff. So nice play by him as well. A7 is definitely an open raise on the button, especially with the antes in there. And jacks, therefore, is a very easy 3-bet, right? Easy 3-bet. A7 is a pretty loose call. Now, on this flop, you definitely want to go ahead and call with A7. I mean, you've got a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, overcard. So I'd like to see a slightly bigger bet by Kazon here, unless he thinks Dragon is just going to go crazy with raises. And Kazon bets again on the turn. He's thinking that Dragon doesn't have an insane amount of aces, but he has a lot of draws in his range that he can get value from. Easy call by in Dragon shoes. I mean, you need no protection, right? If Kazon has ace-8 plus, you're kind of done. And at the same time, if Kazon has any like jacks or draw, you don't need that much protection. So yeah, easy play. And Kazon ended up checking river, which is fine, but I think you can probably put in another bet. If you were to check, you'd probably have to check call. You don't block 8-7, you don't block any hearts, you do block ace-jack somewhat, so you'd probably have to end up check calling, at least against a reasonable bet. And once Kazon checks, I think it's unlikely he's got better than a7, so I'd definitely like to see in position bet here. Yeah, I think that's a little bit weak. When Kazon bets small, he's still betting a lot of middling pairs here, so he's going to have plenty of potential check calls. So yeah, I think his call on the flop is good, his call on the turn is good. On the river, I would have liked to see a bet. You bet to open raises with Jack H, which is probably one of the weakest jacks he's going to open raise. Dragon decides to 3-bet, and Hubetsu decides to call, which is... I mean, he's probably going to listen to this, but this is unbelievably bad. This is really, really bad. So, interesting play here. Dragon ends up potting the 8-7-5 board, which is, it's obviously a good board for Hubetsu. I mean, who knows, right? He can have 9-6 and 6-4, I guess. But he can definitely have 8-7s, 5s, 7-8. He can obviously have some overpairs, even as good as pocket queens, I would say. So... basically, what Dragon's trying to do, he's trying to put as much money into the pot as quickly as possible, now that his pocket jacks are still looking pretty sweet. And Hubetsu is thinking, well, it's too much to ship here, with 14 or 15k behind. At the same time, villain could be bluffing. I unblock a lot of bluffs. I block pocket jacks, so I'm going to call. And Dragon bets again. If you're going to bet the flop this large, betting turn makes a bit of sense, right? You block Jack 9. 10-7 is unlikely, but then again, who knows? So you're going to get value from a lot of hands like 10-9, 8-9, King 6 of spades, that type of stuff. And on the river, this Jack is definitely not the greatest card for Dragon's range, so it would be pretty cool to see him check call this one, try and pick off a bluff against 2 spades, but I can't fault him for betting. And Hubetsu shoves, thinking, well, Dragon probably would have shoved Queen Jack, so if he ever calls you with a 6 or a set, I'm free rolling essentially, so I do like to shove. So yeah, pretty big pot, and Hubetsu got pretty lucky there. Wait. Why is Hubetsu... Oh, I assume Hubetsu was shipped half the pot, but unless I'm blind, no, they definitely have the same hand, so yeah, this should be a split. It just didn't show. So Dragon raises under the gun with Queen Jack suited. Very good raise. And a bit too easy with the easy 3-bet with jacks. Queen Jack suited, you can kind of do all 3 things. But I think folding is a little bit tight in an ante-game. 10-7-6 is definitely not a very good board for a bit too easy, because he's not going to 3-bet that many hands like that make a set or a straight. I wouldn't mind seeing Dragon actually check raise here as a bluff sometimes with his hand. If you're going to bet the flop, jacks is a nice hand to do it with, because, you have a very good hand, but you also need some protection. The king is a bad card. I mean, Dragon could have floated a hand like ace-king or 2 diamonds, right? So a bit too easy, has to be careful. He decides to check. Good play. And Dragon decides to check here. I'd like to see him bluff. I mean, it's very difficult for him to show up with a lot of bluffs. Maybe he has a hand like ace queen of spades. He has a hand like queen jack of spades that we see here, but this is the bottom of his range. I wouldn't hate if bit too easy put in a very small bet here, but he decides to check, which is fine. So good play. I think Dragon could have bluffed that river. Deuces is a loose but fine open raise. And Katya decides to flat here, which is, which is pretty cool. 7-8 suited is a nice candidate to flat with. And we see a 10-9-5 board. Katya definitely has 10 9s and 5s at some frequency, I would guess. So a bit too easy, has to be a little bit careful. So he does decide to check behind. And Katya bets around 3/4 pot, which is a fine bet size. You could go a bit bigger if you like, but I think this is a perfectly fine sizing. And bit too easy is in a shitty spot, right? Because on the one hand, he does a great job of unblocking all bluffs. King Jack, King Queen, 8-7, 6-7, hearts, maybe like Ace 3, Ace Deuce. So he does a great job of unblocking them. On the other hand, those hands have so much equity. They have 2 overcards and a straight draw, right? Maybe a flush draw. And Katya decides to bet 3/4 pot here. I like the bet. Everything missed, so it's easy to be over bluffing, but at the same time, 7-8 is just a prime bluffing candidate. So I actually kind of like his bluff. And a bit too easy, I mean, he thinks, well, this river's about as good as it gets. Pocket 5s and 5-4 are less likely now. Everything missed, so I'm going to call. So pretty loose play, but seems like a fine one. So Jack 4 suited, one of the weakest jacks I imagine Katya opens, but a fine open raise. Ace 9 is a loose-ish call in the small blind. With the ante, it's significantly better, but it's still a little bit loose. Jack 8-3 is a flop. I'd like to see him just check, and then once Dragon does bet, I'd like to see Katya just call here against 2/3 pot. I like the call. And now Dragon bets, a little bit over 40% pot. So, he's thinking, well, I hit a 9. I don't really want to bet big. I don't really want to check, so I'm betting a medium size. Easy call by Katya. He beats a couple of worse value bets. He beats some bluffs, but it's definitely not a great spot. If Dragon bet like 4K, you should definitely just fold. Dragon checks, and I think this hand is not strong enough to value bet. I also think it's too strong to turn into a bluff, so easy check by Katya. Nice play. 9-7 is definitely an open raise. And easy squeeze here by Kazon with the pocket 10s. If Dragon had Jacks plus, I think he would have squeezed, so I like this 3-bet. And he kind of kicks Katya out of the pot. Katya goes for the very loose 4-bet. This is very, very loose. And calling would be standard. Good play. And this is obviously an amazing board for Katya, right? Because he'll have maybe 10s, but definitely aces, kings, ace, king. Maybe he 4-bet bluffs ace 10 suited or off suited or queen jack suited or offsuit. So he gets to be super aggressive here. I like the bet. And Kazon just calls here because he knows he's way behind. I actually really like that play. Good play by him. And he checks the turn. There's not that many flushes in Katya's range, but there's some. And on the river, it's kind of tricky in a Kazon spot, right? Because there's not that many hands he'd be interested in value betting. He's got maybe like queen jack or jack 10 of clubs, 10-9 of clubs, maybe 6-7 of clubs. He's got maybe like queen jack of spades, like pocket 10s. But all those hands could already be behind against hands like aces, kings, maybe 10s. So let's see what he does. Be very interested to see him check, actually, and see if Katya turns this into a bluff. So he does go for the check, which I actually don't mind. In fact, I think is a great play. I don't really like Katya's sizing here. I think he should go all in. So yeah. And Kazon goes for the call. I was so ready to give Kazon a 10 out of 10. I love the squeeze. I love the call. I love the check on the flop. I love the river check. But then he should shove river. So yes, he understands that he can be beat to ace against aces and kings. But I think against his bet size, he should end up just shoving. So yeah, I'll give Kazon an 8.5 out of 10 because he didn't shove the river. I'll give Katya I'll give him an 7.5 out of 10. I think he really should have shoved the river. I mean, there's 3/4 pot behind, right? Not even less than 3/4 pot behind. He can have aces, kings, 10s, maybe queen jack. Maybe he has some kind of random queen 9 of clubs. He can have so many value bets. So, and I think he would want to bet the maximum. So I'm not a big fan of Katya. So far, I think that Katya's played every hand perfectly, basically. In fact, I think he's played every hand perfectly. But this is the first one where I'm like, oh, this one I don't like so much. Gotta bluff bigger. If you bluff bigger, you can bluff more often. We've got ace 3 offsuit in the cutoff, which is definitely a very loose raise, but there's an ante in there. Katya decides to call here, which makes sense. And ace 5-4 is a very dry board that you know, obviously Yubetsu's going to hit quite hard. And Dragon actually leads 40% pot. I'm not a big fan of this. Yes, he may have some kind of 2-pair straight advantage, but he doesn't really have any other advantage. Love the call by Yubetsu. Easy call, of course. And Kati ends up calling as well, so he probably has hand like 6-7 or an ace. I don't think he would slow play a set very often, but it's definitely possible. Maybe hand like 5-4. And Dragon here probably has more threes than anybody else. He also has a flush draw, so I guess you might as well bet. Yubetsu goes for the raise, you know, so on the one hand, he's got a straight, but then again, he doesn't have too many of them. So he probably thinks that Dragon's got a lot of good hands here, and he's trying to get value from him. And Dragon shoves here, he kind of free rolls, right? He's saying, well, Yubetsu, I know you never have 6-3, so I know you can never have me beat, so even if you call me with a 3, then I still got a flush draw. So I'm going to screw you here. Maybe Yubetsu has like king 3 of hearts. So I guess there's one combo he could be losing against. Heart or not? No. Pair on the river, but doesn't count. So nice hand to both guys. Okay, between us, and this will obviously never make the YouTube highlights, but I cannot believe how badly these guys are playing. I'm trying to be nice to them, but I cannot believe how bad some of these guys are. Jesus Christ. I mean, I really can't believe how bad it is. I'm sorry, but Yubetsu and Kazan have misplayed every single hand so far. I'm trying to be nice, but it's embarrassing, to be honest. But that's okay, right, guys? As I always say, I don't think you should judge people based on their skill level. So, you know, think of anything in life, right? You were bad at it at one point, and now you're really good at it. And obviously, in the middle of that journey, you were decent at it, and that's where they are at right now. So that's perfectly fine. I don't think you should ever laugh at people for not being good at something, right? Obviously, if they're not good at something but have a big mouth, like Phil Hellmuth, for instance, okay, then it's worth maybe laughing at them. But I don't think you should judge people based on their skill, right? I mean, think of anything, like everything in life. You know, any type of academic pursuit, you know, physical pursuit. When it comes to your personality, everybody has weaknesses in every single spot, right? So I don't think we should make fun of that. But with that said, this is embarrassing, really embarrassing. So, but that's good, right? I mean, guys, we're playing 5100 ante, and you know, people are misplaying almost every single hand, quite badly, in fact. So that's a good thing. So if you're listening and you're like, hey, but I play NL50, well, great, because it means that if these guys are playing NL10K, you're playing NL50, it means you can get to NL10K. And it also means that you can beat this NL50 game if you believe in yourself and work hard, right? So this should be motivation. If you see 6 times Linus make perfect plays, that's very demoralizing, right? Because you're like, can I really ever become this good? Look at how much better they are. But if you look at these guys, I mean, you're probably the same level or better than them. So they just have more money or a better backer. So that's great for you, right? So make sure that motivates you. It really should.